Good evening, everyone. Nice to join you on this lovely little Wednesday night as we go through a kit build. I hope everyone's doing well. What we're going to do is we are going to take a little bit of the squiz through this here, the Yokomo MD2 or the Master Drift. It's Yokomo's first blue car in a very, very long time. I don't think there's been one since about 2012, 2013. It's, I think the last one was the Yokomo, probably either the BD7 or the Yokomo DIB in blue. So, yeah, it's nice to see one. I'm really excited to get into it. Sadly, Brett and BJ decided to violate this kit on live stream, but that's okay. We'll forgive them for it because it was quite a nice box to get into. So yeah, that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. Probably try and do an hour to 2 hours each night. We're gonna make our way through. Probably take about 2 nights, but that's part of the fun. Once we're finished with this baby, we're gonna throw in some of my favorite electronics. So D10 motor from Hobbywing, and this is probably one of my favorite combinations. It's Futaba's CD700 servo paired with a 550 gyro, along with an MC 970 ESC with S-Bus and a matching R404 SBE receiver. The great thing about this is if you have something like a, with this receiver here, if you have a 10PX, you can tune everything completely from the radio. So no programming cards required for any of it, which is awesome, which is why I love this stuff so much. It's just fantastic hues and great use of the S-Bus system from Futaba. We've got a few other little bits and pieces that we're going to add tonight to the build. I couldn't help myself. So blue car, blue screws. There's a couple of screws I'm going to keep black and steel for certain parts of the build, but other than that, I couldn't help myself. Blue car, blue screws. Got to do it. These are from RC Maker. They're a really, really handy little piece that I like. They are some carbon clips. They replace the E-clips that hold the suspension arms on. It makes it a lot faster to get the arms on and off. And you're not having to search for an E-ring tool. I mean, I have one, but for a lot of people, taking E-rings on and off is an absolute pain in the butt. So they're really handy. I like these as well. These are from the YD2 series, rear hubs. The linkage point is a lot higher, so it allows you to have a much higher roll center. So they're really handy for me too. But let's get started. As you can see, we've got the beautiful 9 steps cutting mat. So thank you for that very much for that, guys. And let's get started. So we'll pop out our little instruction book as per usual, and we'll go along with it. So the first step with the MD series, much like the MD1 build, is with the diff. Pretty much exactly the same. It's pretty much been the same since the B-Max series, the B-Max buggies. I think the outdrives have changed, so you run the protectors over the axles. But what we're going to do is we're going to make a slight change from the beginning. It's a trend that a lot of people have used recently, and that's to really, really take away a lot of the diff action take away the resistance in the diff. So a lot of the guys now are running, and a lot of the drivers around the world are running very, very low diff oil, if nothing. So we're just going to add a little bit of really light diff oil here, and it helps if I actually pop the cap out. But we're going to run some really, really light diff oil. And what this will do is it just lubricates the gears. And all it do is literally just lubricating the gears. There's nothing else to it. All I'm doing is lubricating the internal so it spins nice and freely. We are going to put the black grease on the gasket, on the diff gasket, because we don't want to leak ideally. But Lovely, lovely soft coating mat there. It's actually a really nice texture, as opposed to some of like the green ones and stuff you get. These actually really nice and soft to the touch. So just a little bit of gasket goo. And we're going to get a little bit on it, but that's good because we can just wipe it off after. Just a little bit of gasket goo. So the black grease to seal it up. Easy clean. And we're going to get that together. So yeah, that's something that a lot of guys around the world have been doing, is using minimal lubrication. So you still get the diff action, but it comes in very, very smoothly at a very low power. So you can get traction as soon as possible on low power surfaces. Now I'm going to use this. I know Brett and BJ are not fans of it, but I think as I've told them before, when you're building cars a lot, sometimes you just don't have time or the inclination to do everything by hand. But the good thing about this one is at least it does stop when you need it to without breaking stuff. So we're going to get into it here. So that's it. Diff is done. As you can see, cross pattern build. So you always go 1, 2, 3, 4. And that just helps you keep your even, keeps everything nice and even as you tighten it all up. So diff done. Now, getting into the good stuff. This is some of the stuff that I wanted to see and absolutely caught my eye when the kit first came out, was announced as well. But that beautiful, beautiful Yokomo blue. This is, wow. Haven't seen this color in such a long time in a new kit. I got a hand of a Yokomo DRB recently. That's a kit back from the 2010s. But again, that Yokomo blue looks absolutely gorgeous. Fantastic to look at and really, really pretty. So it's nice to see the color back, and it's going to look fantastic. So first things first, we're going to get a bit of thread lock out because generally screws into metal, you need some thread lock. It's when you thread lock these screws up, you don't have to do them too tight. It's just get them snug and let the thread lock do the rest, because you don't want everything to get super tight and super snug. You just want it to not come loose. That's literally it. Don't want it to come loose. So we're going to grab our bulkhead from here. We've got 2 shafts. Now this we are setting up for the 4-gear setup. The MD1 and 2 series both allow you the option of running either a 3-gear or a 4-gear gearbox, which allows the motor to rotate either clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on whether you want anti-squat or you want pro squat. So that's purely up to you and it's a personal choice. I personally prefer, the MD1 came standard with a 3-gear setup. I swapped over to the 4-gear as I preferred that with my YD2 series, and it worked really, really well. How you going, guys? Nice to see you there, Brett and Jeff. Nice for you to join us tonight, mate. Enjoy the stream, and if you've got any questions, just sing out. So we're going to grab some M2.6 screws here, and yes, we're going to grab the start of these beautiful, beautiful blue screws. I cannot help myself. They look so pretty. So again, that's where the thread lock is key. All we're doing is just a dot on the screw, and you don't have to crank on it too hard. All you're doing is gently making it nice and snug. That is it. So 1 and 2. So this is for the 4-gear setup. Yeah, I'm such a fan of this blue. It looks fantastic. So what we're going to do next is we're going to have a look at installing the idler and the lay shaft. So got some nice bearings, got some shims. Just going to add a couple dots of bearing oil just to these. not a huge amount. Yeah, I honestly, I got this mat very recently, and it is honestly lovely little mat. And as I think Brett said, and Brett and BJ have said on stream, it is a lovely little accessory you get for all orders over $150, which is awesome. It means that, you know, it's always nice to get a little bonus when you place an order. So really cool. So idlers, sorry, they're putting some shims on, and then our bearings, and then we're going to start getting our idler gears on. Now, again, this gearbox has been around for pretty much the same design. These parts have been around since the BMAX 2 days. So it's very tested and true design. I don't ever think I've seen a YD2 gearbox fail. I've seen, you know, there are lots of other brands that have had gearboxes have issues, but honestly, it's been around for so long, it has never failed that I have seen. I just have never seen someone manage to kill a YD2 gearbox. They just don't die. So it's a really nice part of the kit that goes together very well. So lathe shaft goes through here, so that will come up here and spin the gears as such, but we don't actually bolt that on until the next part of our manual, which is over here. So get bag 3 out, because we're going to start unboxing some more of our beautiful parts. Oh, we also need these. Okay, so next stage is to put our bearing into this part here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the slide adjuster here. Now that is the rear suspension mount, essentially. So as this moves up and down, you can adjust the squat on the rear suspension. So that comes in here and goes together like that. So what we're going to do is going to quickly chuck together 2 more screws, and that will hold all that together very nicely. So these screws go in the other side of the idlers just to keep everything together. So the idler shaft, keep everything together and hold the gearbox together. Beautiful. So you can see it's sitting there. Now what happens is we only put 1 bearing in this side until we actually add the rest of the bracket, which is here, which will come on a bit later. Very soon, I believe. So if we actually look at the next part of the manual, and there it is. So if we actually look over here, we have motor mount, top shaft holder, and then our bearing. So the bearing will go into our top shaft holder to the very bottom. We'll pull that out actually. Probably easier to do it this way. So sit that there. Top shaft holder goes straight over the top and will then get attached into here. Now I like to keep that as a black steel screw personally, but we're going to have a little sneaky peek and see how we go with these. Yeah, I love the shape of this thing. Like I said, I've been using the same basis for quite a while now, obviously on the MD1, but it's such a lovely gearbox to put together. It just fits so nicely, so smooth, and is very easily adjustable. So put the screws in. So just for now, just gently there, so we can still shift it, but the thread lock is still going to dry very shortly. So the standard setup, I believe, for this is just off the center, so it's the bottom side, and we will adjust it. You can adjust up and down depending on where you want your motor position, which is a really nice bit of adjusting. So that can all sit in there. And those are nice and snug. Again, don't kill the screws, just until everything is nice and snug, and the thread lock will do the rest for you. So that's there together. So our next part is the diff adjusters. We'll grab some more screws while we're at it. So one of the interesting things is with that 3-gear and 4-gear options, you actually have height adjustments available to yourself as well. So these are the height adjusters that can go onto the diff. So you can go up and down depending on which adjusters you like. You can have 0, 1, and 2 mil up on both the 3 and 4-gear gearbox. But they are different between the two different settings. So the 3-gear has its own height adjusters as opposed to the 4-gear gearbox. So that's going in. We're going to make sure we have everything pointing the correct direction. So there's our motor mount. So we flip her over. And we make sure we have everything set where we want. So it's that way. And we're going to drop in the other direction to make sure we have everything nicely spaced as required. And as it drops in, beautiful, nice and smooth. Everything is now sitting really smooth, spinning really, really freely, which is awesome. So the bottom plate, which again, that lovely, lovely blue, will go in. And we can now do that. Now, I always like to do these 2 screws here first because it gives you a little bit more space before you put on the bottom one. So it's just a little bit easier to get your hex driver across here with no screw in there. So there's quite a few drift events coming up in the world, along with various touring car events I know. I believe in the next 2 weeks you've got ladder to TDC. Now the TDC tournament it's probably the biggest worldwide drift tournament for the last few years, since the ending of the Worlds in Europe. I believe Singapore has the next round, but a few other countries also have their own rounds coming up very soon, which is awesome. So that's going to be quite cool to watch. There we go. That's all together. And that's our gearbox sitting there nicely. I believe the next part, yep, is our spur gear and spur gear mount. So that's this over here. And we will get the screws. So that's our pin that we need. And we're also going to grab the grub screw that we need to match as well, which I believe is a 3x4. There's our grub. Also going to grab 4 3x16s to apply into the spur gear. So same again, this is the same mount that's been around for quite a long time. It works well, why change it? So we're going to just use again, just a dab of thread lock into metal. It doesn't need to be a lot, just snug. And the thread lock will do the rest. Because when you're undoing screws, the last thing you want is to have screws get absolutely stuck in there because you've used, one, the wrong thread lock, and two, you've used way too much thread lock. So at the moment, just a dab. This is some of that blue thread lock, or even the Loctite correct thread lock. It's just a semi-permanent, so once you crack it, the screw will come loose, and you don't have to crank on them to lock it up. So that one again, just a dab. You learn a lot of things over the years as you build cars. The use of thread lock and its very liberal application and installation was one of the things drilled into me by the late great Will Chang, who many people who are part of the Helms community will know. He's been a real wealth of knowledge to a lot of people in the RC community. I got to know him obviously through drifting, and I knew him for over 10 years. But a great man to know, and always lovely to have around the community. Really good friend, and we shared quite a bit of different history, which was interesting, due to some heritage as well. But he's a great friend who we always very fondly remember. But yeah, this kit will actually get a little panda sticker as well for it too. So, all right, next stage. So we need some more grub screws. We're going to start attaching the rear shock mounts. So that's these here. We've got some other parts for that too. But we are going to need some more grub screws. So we need 3x8s and 3x15s. So where are 3x8s? Oh, too low. There we go. 3x8. We need 2 of those. And we also need some 3x15s, which I believe are here. That's our 3x10, so that should be our 3x15. Beautiful. We need 2 of those. We will also need some 3x12 button heads, which I believe are right here. And that should be everything. All right. So yes, this is quite a particular part here. So yes, the two 3x12s will go in at the bottom of this mount to hold it in place, and then we will screw in the upper part of the mount with the ball studs. So all this will go in here, and then the ESC mount will go onto the back of that. So first things first, let's go. So if we look at our mounts, we have, that is our left mount. So again, I might just make sure we have enough in there. One, and if we try to throw away, 2. So that is the first part of the shock mount here. So as you look at that sit, so the shock tops will sit up here with the bracket, and that actually will be the body post space. So that will go there, and we've got our rear links over here as well. So go do the other side, and then we can start adding the grub screws for the shock mount. So if you've got any questions, guys, feel free to ask. We can have a bit of a chat about the car and the build, and even just asking in general as we go along, just to go through the kit and have a bit of a fun chat. So that there are those mounts on. Now what we need to do here is the grub screws. So these are quite particular the way these go on. So the bottom grub screw is purely used to locate the mount. So it will go in most of the way and stop just there. Because what happens is that this just positions over the top. Now it doesn't need to be massively out, so only about a couple mil really. All you need to see it comes out of here. And with that over the top, that locates it nicely. So that goes on. I'm going to do the same for the other side. I'm just going to give that a little second just to dry in place. Again, don't need to be absolutely rammed in, and they need to just have enough thread sticking out for our grub screw. So next part is this one. So these are the full length parts. So again, these will go in. Just need to stop. And this will then become the base for the shock ball stud and the rear body poke mounts as well. So they're snug. That mount will now go on like that. We'll then add a spacer and then the shock ball. So you can see how that all sits really nicely there. Now again, you can change this upper shock angle purely by adjusting these spacers. So you can space it up or back depending on how much adjustment, where you want the shock top to sit. And then the arms also have, the lower arms have their own adjustments for the shock bottoms too. So now we're going to bolt on the ESC plate. So grab ourselves 4 of the lovely blue countersunk screws for the plate. Now this is pretty much identical, other than this body post mount here, this has been identical essentially to our MD1 build. If anyone hasn't seen the MD1 build, you're welcome to have a look. It should be part of the Hearns channel. So if you just do a quick search through the Hearns channel, you can find that video. That pretty much covered, that was the original MD1, the Master Drift from Yokomo, and that was about 1.5 years ago. It was a lovely kit. This is why they've kept a lot of that design in the MD2, but there are quite a few changes. The front suspension has undergone massive changes. The battery mount, and servo mounting has all undergone massive changes now. So it is quite a bit different than what it used to be. So there we go. That is ESC plate all on. Now our next part, wow, I've managed to chew through quite a few bags already. So the next part we're going to grab will be the rear suspension mounts. So let's have a dig through here. And there we go. So that will be our next bag. So we're on to bag 4 now. So a lot of these parts will be quite familiar to those who have built Yokomo kits recently. This is all, these parts here, like a lot of this, like we're only using this part of the tree, but this is all off the BD11, BD12. And it's fantastic. I've actually been racing a Yokomo MD2.0 myself this year, and it has been a lot of fun. It's meant that I do share parts on all my kits, which is really, really good. But it means you actually start to recognize the parts and how things go together really quite quickly, depending on what you've got. So having the same parts in multiple kits is always great. So these will come on a little bit later. I'm just grabbing them off the parts tree now to make it a bit quicker. But what we're going to look at is these suspension mounts right here. So we might actually need some of these spacers out of here. And this is the first part of our kit where the E-rings will not come into play, unfortunately. We are going to use the carbon clips. So if you actually look at our manual here, you can see the setup, the way the positioning all works. Generally, I like to have a bit of rear toe on my cars. So that will mean that my toe position will have outer and outer on both. So what we'll do is we will do that setup. What we need to do is grab some more screws. So what are we grabbing now? We're grabbing some 3x8 buttons. And I'm going to grab the steels because I'm a big fan of steel screws where it counts. So they are going to be quite handy for the back, just for a little bit better grab on the suspension. So what we're going to do now is our 3x8s through here, and they're going to go into the suspension balls, which will then get snapped into these mounts. So let's do it. So we're going to get a bit of, again, just a little bit of thread lock. Just don't want them to come loose until we need to undo them, which for the life of this car, we really shouldn't ever need them to come out. I don't think I've ever undone them on my MD1. In the year and a half I've owned it, I've never needed to undo them. So just handy to have the parts there, but just don't want them coming loose on you until you need to undo something. This again is identical to the MD1 build, so makes it really quite simple, but having the blue color makes it just so much nicer. I love it. It's a gorgeous color. Tamiya blue is a brighter blue, and having owned a lot of Tamiya, I do recognize it quite well. The other color, I think Associated still do some parts blue, but again, not quite the same color. So Yokomo blue is quite a unique blue among parts, but looks absolutely gorgeous. All right, so that's our parts ready. So for me, this is the easiest way to get these balls on. Push them into the 7mm and push down. It is a fairly firm snap, but they won't. It's just a really, really easy way to do them without hurting your poor little fingers. So that is that all done. Those are now ready to go on with our spacers. So if we look at our mounts here, that's our positioning here. You can see this sliding up and down. The standard setting is just one down from the top, but I'll probably use the top setting because I want my car to have a little bit more on the squat. So, same deal. So through the first part of our mount. Now, again, what we'll do is we're going to go through and make sure we have these screws in our correct position. So pulling that to that side and pulling this screw all the way over. That's now position. And same on this side. So pulling, make sure we pull this screw all the way over. And same on the bottom. So you can clearly see that those screws have both moved to the far side there. So now we make sure we have our toe setting correct. So there we go. That's one side, and now we will do the other. Now, I haven't quite decided what body shell will go on this car yet. That's something that always takes a little bit of time, trying to figure out what shell. But if everything goes well, hopefully be traveling to Singapore later in the year with this car, and may bring a new shell. Hopefully, I can actually get it done in time, knowing my ability to get body shells on a time frame is not great. So we'll have to try and make sure we do that correctly. So that is now bolted on. So you can see there, we're now sitting in the highest position with the spacer, and these are now all the way up. So let's give that a quick wipe from thread lock. So that is now ready to be attached, to have the rear arms attached to it and the rear hubs. So if we look at that, you can see, so that's the whole rear transmission is essentially done. That is it. That is the Yokomo gearbox. It's based from the YD2, which is originally from the BMAX series. Hasn't changed in the best part of 10, 12 years, and still absolutely faultless. So fantastic. We'll just pop that to the side for now, and we're going to get into the rear arms. So what we're going to do now is these arms, again, really, really similar to the BD12 ones, which is great. Same style sort of inserts. For the MD series, you get aluminium ones. Generally on the BD series, we run a composite mount. So these are some of the carbon clips that I like. They're from RC Maker. They fit the BD12 as well, which is partly why I got them originally, but they work fantastically. So if we actually look at this, how we're going to bolt this all together, need some more of our favorite 2.5, well, the 2.5 by 6 screws. Have a couple more. Same deal again. So got a thread lock and sit that into our mount, just like so. And a just snug screw. Beautiful. Oops. That's actually a good sign, the fact that it drops in so smoothly and can actually come back out. It means the parts are not overly, they're not too tightly fitted. They actually fit nice and snug without being loose in position. So here we go. Beautiful. So parts are in. Next thing, we've got attachments to the arms. So look at our trusty instruction manual. Flip over. These arms will come on like so, and they will go in this direction. So screw heads are on display. Come on there, and there, and there, and there. Now you can see they are going to be snug to go on, and that is the point. So they go, these arms will go onto the car, and there will be very little play once they go on. So you can see there's these arms, they can't move side to side. They're on, they're not coming off. So now is the time to get our carbon clips on. I like just to get a little tweezer under there just to make sure everything's nice and in position. And then slide the clips in. They are tight, and the whole idea of the parts being tight is, again, so they don't come loose. So you can see the first one on there. And our second one there. One and two. So when you pull them off, you can literally just pop tweezers in there and pull them straight out for easy access. So if you're like me and you like to swap and change your diffs around depending on the settings, because I run a on my MD series, I like to run a CLSD. So it's a diff which you can tune with different springs. Really handy on really slick surfaces. I like to use that. So really, really handy just to pop, clip, 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 bolts out, and the whole axle comes straight out the bottom, nice and easy. So what are we doing next? We're starting with the rest of the rear suspension. So we need to grab this bag here. So bag 6 will give us our ball links. It's also got the two parts here to keep the pins in place for our suspension mounts, rear axles, rear and front hubs, and wheel hexes along with the bearings and turnbuckles. Now obviously the turnbuckles that I will use will be a different length tonight because I am running a different rear upright. So you can see here, this is the same as the original, or very similar to the original YD2 rear upright, which is the ball, which is the points on top. I'm going to run with this one here, just because I like the way these sit a bit more. So let's get started. So if we get our bearings and our various spaces out, bearings again, just a dot of bearing oil, not a lot, just a little touch. and into the hubs. And as we push the axle through, you can actually see there, it sits nicely. Beautiful, nice and smooth. Beautiful. So our next part is to actually clamp the wheel axles all on and the ball studs in position. So we have a couple different ball studs. We will need the medium length ones. We're also going to need our lovely little cap heads from our screw kit, because that will clamp the wheel axles in position. Now, I love that. Once again, Yokomo have brought back the beautiful blue wheel hexes, which I think they were last seen on the DRB series, because I think the BD7 series may have been using a 4mm hub. So these have been away for a little while. So pin in, clamping hex on, and just go till it's snug. Really don't need to kill these screws, because all you're doing is you're just stopping the hex unclamping. Now there is like a little ridge, so once it goes on, it shouldn't come off easily. Just need to get it over the collar, and once it goes on, they shouldn't come out easy. It's just snug. If you keep trying to kill it, eventually you'll crack the aluminium, because it is just aluminium. It's designed to be nice and light. It's not designed to be really heavy. So with that, with our parts bags. So I will actually run it as that. Some people like to add a lot more lubrication to it. I generally don't, because depending on where you run, like where I drift, there's generally a bit more dust and dirt. So I try not to put a huge amounts of grease on my car parts, so you can blow the dust and dirt out and it doesn't tend to stick to things. These out here are the little C-clips. So because the diff out drives are aluminium, if you run straight steel into the aluminium, you're going to tear it apart. So we have these clips that go on, and they help protect the outdrives from damage. So on we go. What we're going to do here, let me just get my positioning for the rear hub. Just going to set it up really quickly. Just bear with me. So just going to set this up like this. So that axle will go in there. What we do is to set this up, you drop this through, get our pin comes through, spacer on either side. Again, this might be very, very familiar from the MD1 build. So spacer there, and a spacer on this side. In position, and just like that. So this will now sit over the top there and be screwed into position from the top side of the axle. So again, for these, I'm probably going to use the steel versions just because this is a area that I like to have a little bit more strength. Just due to the fact these will get undone and done a fair bit depending on my settings. So it just means a little bit stronger screw, less likely to strip things out when you really don't need it. Oh, hello. Good to see you, Nids and Thunder Turbine. Nice of you guys to drop in tonight. Yes, it is a live stream. So this is the Yokomo MD2 Master Drift build. Just going through it and going through a few steps of the build tonight. Probably going to get close to half done, and we'll finish off hopefully tomorrow night if everything works out as planned. So we go. Same deal again. Pop this through. We'll get one pin in with a washer. Yep. And there we go. So now everything's seated nicely. Let's get the pin in position. And we can drop this over the top. Yep. The tricks of working with stuff in a confined space. Okay, so that is in position now. Let's try and cap it off again. There we go. So we got it this time. Put it back in position, and let's get the screws in now. There's one. And everything should go well. We get number 2 in position as well. And in we go. So that is the rear all sorted now. Normally we would add our drive shafts in here. Like that. Put our screws and our turnbuckles in place. I will do that after tonight's build because I have to I will have to check the dimensions I need for a turnbuckle to get everything in position the way I want. So I'll reset all that and I'll show you guys tomorrow on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave this part of the build for now and we'll come back to that tomorrow. So we'll come back to all these turnbuckles and ball studs once I've set everything the way I would like it. But what we'll do is we're actually going to chuck these two ball studs. So these are the long ball studs, and these spaces here, and we'll get these quickly installed. So these ones are the long studs from Yokomo. One big change from the MD1 to the MD2 was a change to 4.8 ball studs, again to bring it in line with the current Yokomo touring cars. So the MD1 ran a was running 4.3 ball studs, which was the Yokomo standard for quite a while before. And then when the MD2 came out, it was decided to change it to 4.8. So it's a little bit larger, again, a little bit more strength in the system. And again, continuation of sharing parts with the current gen cars. Make sure we get that in position. Screw down. Yep, I know exactly what you mean, Thunder Turbine. Especially when working with like body screws or for shells, or when using 1.2 mil screws, it can be an absolute nightmare trying to work with things in small spaces, and you feel like you need 3 hands. It's even harder on a live stream where you're not allowed to curse if you get it wrong. But that's part of the hobby. Just got to go along with it and see how you go. So what we're going to do next is we're going to get into the fantastic front bulkhead. Now, I saw this and I loved it. Some of the parts are loose because, once again, Brett and BJ decided they needed to be shown to the world, which I can't fault them on. I'll be honest, I can't fault them for it. It looks fantastic. The parts are gorgeous. They look stunning. I mean, you look at this. When I first saw this, these bulkheads with the original, so with the MD2, the first version in black, I thought they looked fantastic. And in blue, they're absolutely stunning. They look amazing in this Yokomo blue. Yeah, the parts look fantastic. Some more ball studs. That's the beautiful new front shock tower. And this is the steering rack here. So we can see some of the gorgeous, gorgeous parts that are about to get used now. So if we have a look at this kit, yep, I've seen some of the installations on DCC decoders, and it can be a genuine nightmare due to the fact that it's such a finicky electrical component that you've got to fit in such a tiny space, and you can't afford to get it wrong. You just cannot afford to get it wrong. So it's really, really key, that you do get it correct. So here we go. So we need ourselves some 3x10s. So we need 1, 2, 3x10s. Need 3 3x8s. And let's start looking through. So we've got quite a few different parts to this system, and the bearings, I remember, this is a part that did strike me straight away as different from the first one. Now, there's a lot of little shims in here, so I have to be very, very careful not to drop or lose anything. But these two bearings now, these are massive. You compare that to the original MD series, they were a lot smaller. So they've gone up in size, and that means the kit will run smoother, and it also means it's less likely to be affected by dirt and grit. So nice big bearings, less chance for slop as well. So that's always very, very handy. Yeah, I can't agree with you more, Thunder. N-Gauge is Oh, I've done Engage in the past. I love the fact you can fit more stuff in a small space, but trying to fit a lot of the smaller parts in a small space does make it much harder for you. So we need to have a look here. So for our next part, we are going to start installing parts onto the rack. So we need to grab ourselves some ball studs, and we're going to start with a 3mm ball stud. So again, make sure we got some on the end of that thread. And we're going into the lower position in the rack. And same on this one here. 3mm again. Lower position in the rack. I just want to make sure, yep. So we have, just make sure you do grab the correct ball studs we have here. That's the short one, and we have two slightly longer studs there as well. So we need to make sure we have the correct studs, because if you get them wrong, that's going to make it much harder. And what we do is we've got our two screws coming from the bottom through here with a 2mm spacer and into here. I've never had to play with installing steam generators onto Engage, and that does scare me a little bit. I've seen some of the size of the parts that are required, and it's bonkers. Engage is. I do have some Engage rolling stock still, but it's chipping and adding parts is going to be crazy. So that is the rack. That's the part of the rack. Now we're actually going to install it into the brace here. And much like the previous MD1, the way the rack bolts on, there is adjustment cams, and those cams rotate and provide more tension or less tension to space the rack correctly. So if we're going to have a look at this, so we are going to I'm going to grab my extra 2mm while I do this. So we are going to go going to go through the bottom here. Through the bottom. Now, if you look here, we actually have to insert two of these silver spacers, the bearing, and then one of these cams. Now, again, just gently insert the cam. We'll get it into position. So that is the cam in there now. And what we'll do is once we install the cams, we're going to check the position of the cam specifically itself to make sure that everything is sitting where it needs to be sitting. So one spacer, two spacers. So if you actually look at our manual, the cams need to be seated about there. So you can see this one's pretty much correct. and the other one is now going to be sitting there. So just make them snug in position. So now our bearings are nicely tensioned where they need to be. So that's the first part. Our next part is installing actually inserting this onto the rack rail here, just like that. And we will need to add the cam and spacers to seat this correctly as well. There's our stopper cam. There's one spacer, and we will add another one. So we'll add this here, and we'll add our spacer to get that seated correctly. So probably going to be easiest to do it like this. So we can position the rail how it needs to sit, and then gently apply the cam and the spacer. So again, just gently get the screw in place, spacer, just gently get it in. And once we have it in position, we're going to set the cam where it needs to be. Now we can check our manual, and that cam should be set just to that side there. And that will get a fairly smooth place. So I'm going to go a fraction looser. To find the tension I need for that rack to run nice and smoothly. So there, I've loosened it a fraction more, and that is really nice and smooth now. So that is perfect. That's good to go. So that is the steering rack done. And our next part will be installing that into these beautiful looking bulkheads. I love these things. They look so nice. They are fantastic. The engineering that's gone into these is breathtaking. It's these are a completely new design as opposed to the MD1. They look completely different, and they are going to be fantastic. So needs more screws. So a single 3x6, two 3x8s, and two 3x10s. So what we've got to do here is we actually have a secondary part screw which actually will attach through here once we've spaced everything accordingly. And that will actually act as a floating mechanism to guide this in and out. And these spacers can move the rack backwards and forwards depending on where you actually want it. Again, big adjustments available to you. How much of it you use is purely up to you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab that, have a thread lock, and we're going to gently insert this. Now what I'll do is I'm going to insert both screws, then we'll tighten it with the spacers. So get it inserted first, because it's much easier to add the spacers once the screws are in place. Okay, so now you can see here the rack can move backwards and forwards. So we're going to drop in the two spacers, so the 0.5 mil and the 1 mil. So currently it's sitting back 1.5 mil. So they will drop straight into here, into that position. So now that will get. We will now tighten the rack with these spacers in place. Yeah, Brett and BJ, I think they get very, very, very close to needing a beep. Some very cheeky language. For those of us who are a little bit older, brings back the old double entendres from Are You Being Served? Really big, big memories of that show. But again, that's part of the fun. What you can do, a little cheeky get away with without actually crossing a line. So it's highly entertaining. I do find so anyway. So next part, again, we're going to do the front shock mount. Again, this was exactly the same as the MD1. You'll notice that there is no spacer sitting around here this time. This is due to the fact that this is not the front body mount does not mount the same as the rear, so don't need any of that. So just going to get that nice and snug there. Spacers, and then ball studs. So just get them on by hand before we give them a crank with the 3mm driver. Oh, I absolutely understand. I think a lot of us are quite a bit older than that, Thunder. But it doesn't mean it's any less entertaining when it happens. If you get a chance, it's probably quite a fun thing to check out the old TV show Are You Being Served? You'll get a bit of a questionable education, I guess, into some British humour from a few years ago, but still highly entertaining. So that is our screw in for the top now. So everything is still moving nice and smoothly, which is awesome. But now this rack is completely secure. There are 2 screws in here locking it, and a screw from the top absolutely locking everything down so nothing moves. So now we're going to bolt on the front body mount. I think I've grabbed the 3x6. That's not ideal. Never hurts to check your screw before you insert them. check for size before you insert. I'm a big fan of actually all the time just putting a bit of a fun TV show or something on in the background when you build. It does help you, I guess, lose a bit of focus. I guess you don't want to have your brain so focused while you're building that you just start to sweat beads. It's good fun just to enjoy your build, go a little bit slower, and have a bit of fun. So that is the front body mount in place now. So I believe we're going to be adding the upper. We'll be bolting on the arms to the kit next, and then we'll be doing the upper arms and adding the other parts to finish this whole front bulkhead together. Because the engineering of this is fantastic. So pop this to the side. We'll grab our parts for the front lower arms. So this, again, will look very familiar. So again, bullheads, which we will swap out these E-rings for some carbon clips. And then we also have our beautiful arms here. And we also have, so this will be, that's for the upper arms. This is all the lower arms. So what we need to do is get ourselves a few grub screws and screws of different sizes. So let's grab those now. Grab our precision tweezers. And we also need the 3x4 set screws of 1 and 2. The Walker's Donut. See, in Perth, I don't have that. Unfortunately, don't quite have the ability to go and just grab a Walker's Donut like that. But it is something that I will have to make a point of grabbing when I visit Melbourne again. I'm not sure when that'll be, but I will make sure that is a request that I have to fulfill. So I'm actually going to do, if you look at this, that is the main chassis. It has changed from the MD1. Previously, the whole upper arm, the front lower arm setup has changed. On the MD1, these was actually bolted to another plate, so they hung differently on the original MD1 as opposed to the MD2. I'm just going to see if I can grab it. So yes, you can actually see here on the this is my MD1. You can actually see that the arms hung from a different carbon plate, and they hung down. Whereas on this version, the arms are bolted directly to the main chassis, and they will actually be inverted. So with the pillar balls, when the settings will be here, they will actually hang the opposite direction. So they'll actually flip over. So that's again some changes that have been made from the MD1 to the MD2, and it just allows you a little bit more. You know, they've made changes because they've noticed things that that clearly people want, and to improve the performance of the kit, which is awesome. You know, it's a kit that's been built and it was a top of the range kit, but Yokomo keep improving on it, which is fantastic. So let's go. So what we're doing now is just installing the ball studs onto the chassis, which we can then snap the suspension ball holders onto. Oops. Helps if I grab the correct part to try and put on the hex driver. And we're going to go through this hole here. So this, I believe this weekend, this week's Hearns Live should be quite an interesting build. Quite an interesting stream. There'll be some new sweep tires and quite a few other things which I really like the look of. I'll tune in if I can, but keep your eyes peeled for it this week. Yeah, I love the blue screws. I mean, I used to color code when I did builds, like my DIB. I built it with full red screws. The return of Yokomo Blue meant I couldn't help myself. I had to go full blue screws. I got to make it look good. So that's all attached now. So we'll pop that over here as we will now do the front suspension arms. So if you look here, that will bolt into that position here. Very, very snug, which again, really good. And that will go there. So make sure everything's seated nicely. Beautiful. All right, so let's get some screws into these. I do love the way the blue screws stand out against the black carbon. They look fantastic. I'll have to show some other interesting builds over time with other different changes on the colors. The alloy screws they're gorgeous. You do have to be careful with them. You can't over torque them because unlike steel, they will snap. There was a certain driver a couple of weeks ago at the Winter Nats who had a decent crash and lost the heads of a lot of his blue alloy screws, which was quite sad. But at least with drifting, the impacts generally are a lot. It's a lot lower impact, so you're not generally going to snap and break things as much. That said, you still need to drive with some care, but you are less likely to break things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop these in, and what happens is, where am I? Pop that there. Because what this will do, this will allow me to lock these in position in here, so I can attach the rod end, and it just allows me to make it a little bit easier to attach the rod end. So we'll get these in here. And we'll use the correct rod ends here. Now, Yokomo have a position, so these will need to face, you can see the flat spot on the shaft. These will face up, so look. So the flat spot on the shaft, the flat spot faces down, these will face up. Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut these off on our trusty mat. Try not to lose the parts. And I love this. Tamiya 5mm adjuster, which is awesome. It just goes straight on without having to hurt your fingers. Such an awesome tool. And just like that, bang. So that needs to rotate 90, so 180. So flat spot down, arm pointing up. Same thing for this one. You can see the difference in just how quick it is to do a build when you do have the correct tools. It makes such a difference. So, same drill again. Beautiful. So those are the lower arms. Now, what we will need to do now is adjust this setting to our correct setting. So what I'm going to do is grab my trusty calipers and set that up. So we need to find 15.5 mil, which we'll do as such. And we will now adjust this to fit. So let me, before I do that, yep. Okay. We will find our 15.5 mil there. And beautiful, 15.5 mil. One. And 2. So those are. So this shoe, that is my. This is the Zap Z42, medium strength. That's what I generally use. It's what lives in my pit bag. You can use. I've used this previously here, which is the Loctite 222. So the low strength or medium strength works really, really well. Do not use the permanent. Do not use the permanent. You will never get your screws out again, or you'll have to superheat them with a soldering iron to be able to get them out. You just want the thread lock to just hold the screws in place. You don't want them vibrating out. That's it. You don't want anything else. You just want to stop the parts vibrating out. Anything beyond that is, yeah, that it's just, you don't need anything stronger than that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to snap our, oops, helps if I grab the 7 mil. And just like that, all the suspension bushes are on. And we will now mount the arms. Okay, so if we look at our mounts here, you can see if we look at our chassis as opposed to the instructions, that is our mount like this, which means that is this arm, that is that arm. You can see that is our mounting point for the dampers. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So they are down nice and snug now, perfect to put on our clips. So they do push on, they can push on by hand, these. These are the carbon clips from RC Maker. But as I said, the standard earrings do work fine. I just like these because they fit a little bit more snug. So there's less movement in the arm, and they're much, much easier to take off. So that is on. Done. So that is our front arms, and as you can see, they are nice and smooth. Sit really nicely. So, time to put together the rest of the front bulkhead and get this baby together. So, we're going to have to dive back into our beautiful box of blue parts and find the steering rack and the bell cranks. So, I'm just trying to pick what kit this is from. I'm actually not sure. Let's have a look. So, these are, that's the center bell crank hub and the mount for it. I believe from this we will only need a servo horn and the servo mounts, is my understanding. Make sure we don't lose our spaces. Let's have a look. So we will need some more set screws, which are the 3x8s. Need one of those. And we also need the short rod end to match. So that will be the smallest versions. And that will be, so that will go into here. Grab our rod adjuster. O2 Pro. I'm sorry, what is... Can you elaborate a little bit more, mate? I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. What is the O2 Pro? Ah, sorry, XVO2 Pro. I'm not sure on who has stock of that. I know it was quite a sought after kit, but I'd send the guys a. Sorry, that's my fault. I couldn't quite see all of your message. Have a chat to the guys. Send the socials a message and see if the guys can give you a hand with that. Unfortunately, I'm not sure of the current stock levels. What's currently isn't available, but I know the boys will be able to help you out if you send a message. So it's what I suspected. We will need to trim a little bit of these rod ends. Just a small amount. And again, making sure that you don't hurt yourself doing it. Just, you need to cut 2 mil off. And what we will do is probably shave a little bit more from that one. That's better. Yeah, not a problem, mate. Yeah, the XVO2, I still own an XVO1 kit. I'm a massive fan of it because I loved, and I still do, I have a massive soft spot for the Tamiya TA03 series. And the TA03 series, it pretty much is like, it looks essentially like a precursor to the XVO2. It's genuinely what it looks like. The purpose of trimming the rod ends is actually part of the manual. So we use the standard kit parts, and you just need to shave 2 mil off one of these just to make it the correct length, which is 26.2 mil. So now that's the correct length, which we've just checked with our trusty calipers. Now we can start bolting him to the rest of this rack. So we have two 2.5 mil spacers. What I'm going to do is I'll quickly add a dot of bearing oil to these bearings as well. What we'll probably do tonight is we're going to bolt together the entire front end. Once we finish with that, we'll probably give it a call it a night for tonight. We've got to save some content for tomorrow, which will probably be the challenging one, as that'll be shock building. I'm not sure how many people have tried shock building on a live stream. They are not the most fun to do, but that's part of the charm of shock building. Is it tests your patience. Yeah, I did. I sort of saw the XVO2. It didn't interest me as much as the original XVO1 did because of that. They changed a lot of things between the 1 and the 2, and I still had a hugely massive soft spot for the XVO1 because of its resemblance to the TA03 series. I didn't really connect with the XVO2 as much. So, cool. So that is ball start on, bell crank in place. So what else do we need? We're going to need some more screws. So 2 3x6s and a 3x10. It is quite therapeutic just building. Honestly, you can just sit down, relax, sort of zone out a bit, and just work your way through. And that's honestly part of why I love building kits. So here is it, just as we attach the front bulkhead on. So I've got 2 screws through the bottom. Again, dab a thread lock. And just position in place. Nice and snug. And what will happen now is we've got the 3x10 coming through the bottom into the bell crank post. So I'm just going to pull this out quickly, just so we can get this tightened nicely. Okay, so that is now in place here. And we'll attach that rod end to here. This is going to be fun without trying to over torque things. There we go. So as you can see now, that is our hub in position, nicely working through. That is nice and smooth, which is awesome. So once we bolt the top of the rest of that bulkhead in, everything will sit even smoother. So that's that in place. And we'll go next part of the bag. So yes, from that plastic parts tree, all we will need is the servo mounts. Yeah, well, that was part of the plan today. Normally on a Wednesday night, quite a lot of the WA guys Perth guys head to the West Coast Model RC, the racetrack. But unfortunately, we're supposed to be hit with a decent storm tonight. So myself and a lot of others have not made the trek out because of it. So instead, we decided to give you guys a build, give you something a bit different to watch, and try and keep everyone a bit more entertained. So we need some more screws here. 3 3x8s. And 3x10. Okay, so let me just move this for a second. So we're going to grab the Futaba 18.5 silver horn for this. And we're going to attach that from this side here. So from the back. So if I bring this mat away for a second, we can then install our 3x8 screws into the top half. Look, the MD2 kit, yeah. Look, it's not the cheapest kit. It is, it is designed as the top of the range premium kit from Yokomo, and there's a reason for that. It's not a cheap one. However, Yokomo do offer multiple kits at great price points. So there's a lot of people who've actually been using Yokomo's entry kit called the RD2 to compete with, and adding a couple upgrades, a few little bits of tuning, and you can still compete with something. You don't have to spend the money. I mean, I love my MD1. It's possibly one of the best kits I've owned. The SD kits are fantastic as well, the Super Drift kits. I personally love the MD kit as well. So there is a kit for everyone's price point. It is purely up to you how you want to go about that. So if you you don't have to spend all the money. You can still get a really nice kit at a slightly cheaper price, but it's purely up to you. So at the moment we're just centering servo horn. Now Yokomo suggests that you offset it 7 degrees. So we're going to offset it one more click. So that will be about there. We'll just chuck a screw through that. Okay, so that's in place now. And I'm just going to grab some screws to mount the servo and the chassis. So just get that installed. So we use the last hole here and the middle hole on the side. So again, this is another change from the MD1 kit, which had the servo in a front directly mounted position. It still used a slightly different crank system, but again, completely different design, showing the evolution. So what we'll do is just quickly adjust that mount into position and get that seated as it needs to be. So again, Yokomo changing the design to suit what the market requires from their kit. So quickly do a rod end adjust, some rod ends for this one. So we are using the standard size rod ends on this one. So the length we need between the two rod ends will be 51.5 millimeters. So we'll get that preset on our calipers. So we know about how much we need. Nope. So we're nearly there. That should be pretty close. Let's take a look. How close are we? So fraction over. Let me go back a little bit. Check again. And we have our correct length, which is great. So that will now go between here and here. And we are connected. Yeah, so one of the main reasons is the weight transfer. That is the big reason for this in general. So most of the current kits try to run a higher rear bias. However, we have to be careful at how much rear bias that is, because with some of the competitions there is a limiting factor to how much rear weight you can have. So it's about going close without going over. So yeah, that's the gearbox will sit about here, and you can see just how much weight there is in various positions. So if I get that one to about there, that will give you about your 260 wheelbase about here. So that's about where everything sits. So your motor's up here, ESC back here, battery here, and that is your positioning. So we've got a little bit more to do. We're going to try and finish off this front end tonight and make that, get that done. So we're going to, what I'll do is I generally like to do the rod ends after, but with this one here, the way we set them is quite important. So we've got these. We also have some turnbuckles. So we will need 10.2 millimeters. So again, we'll set them on the calipers. And we will be using the shorter rod ends on this one. So it is really, really different to the rally cars. I mean, obviously with rally cars, the front weight is a massive difference. I mean, that's part of why I really like the XVO1, because all the front biased weight, it was, for me, that was really cool. I loved that in the kit. You know, and that's again the hark back to the TA03 chassis, which was quite a it was sort of around my entry into RC, the TA03 kits. So for me, that's why I loved seeing the XVO1 kit. It was yeah, really brought back those memories for me. So that's quite cool. Okay, so let's have a look here. Fraction over. Beautiful. So that's set nicely. So we'll grab another one and go through the same drill. Turnbuckles can be a really, really fiddly build, but again, having the correct tools makes it so much easier. Now, Yokomo do give you a handy little turnbuckle wrench in the kit. I like my Aromax and the TRF one I have. The Aromax is great because this is actually double-ended, so it actually covers 3 different size turnbuckles, which is amazing. So depending on what car you have, you can cover lots and lots of parts. And it's also longer. It gives you a little bit more leverage, which is so handy for doing fiddly and complex parts like this. So check again, on a little bit over. There we go. 2 turnbuckles. So these will then attach onto here. So they will attach onto the rack in position, and they will go to the front uprights as they go on the car. Okay, so there we go. That is now in place. Beautiful. So now we've got to bolt on put the upper arms into this mount, get this all bolted together, and that'll pretty much be the end of the build for tonight. I know we want to keep going, and I do too, but look, take it as a bit of fun. 2 hours at a time seems like a good place to stop. Otherwise, I don't think anyone's going to get any sleep tonight. No. Oil shocks are a massive tuning part on drift cars. They are so important. More cars now are running lower and lower shock oil weights for weight transfer, and also just to help the car react quicker to throttle inputs. So you don't need to. They're not going to be like. Gone are the days where you're normally running 300-400 weight as standard. Everything is now much lower. It is much closer to 200, 100, even 100 CST shock oil. Possibly even minimal shock oil just for lubrication. When you start going to, obviously the car starts to bounce and doesn't actually grip the ground anymore, and the shocks don't. The shocks dampers. They don't actually do their job. They don't dampen the impacts anymore. So it's purely dependent on what your process is. So what I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to give these a nip again. So much like the lower arms, give them a nip in place. Then attach the rod ends to the position that we want. So we screw them on. Because what we're going to do is we're going to check our calipers again. We need 8.5 millimeters now. So we check where we're sitting a little bit more. Pretty much bang on. So I'm going to have to go another half a turn in. Check. Beautiful. Same drill again. Get it started. Once we get it started, then you can use the grip on it. And get in position. Same deal, get in position, and we're going to tighten the grub screw. Just check again, make sure everything is all lined up correctly, which is perfect. Beautiful. So now we need to do the spaces correctly. So if we've got a few different spaces and different sizes, we've got 2.5, 2 mil, and 1 mil. So as we grab the bulkhead, we will grab our pins. Now our standard setting position for these pins is if we look at that, our diagram, we are going to the inner lower hole. So there. So we're going the 1 mil, 1.5 mil, then our arms, and then our 2.5 mil. So for both sides. And a spacer. And what will happen is now we will drop this in place. There and there. So that is our bulkhead now about to be fully assembled. And we will use some 3x6s again in the same manner before we bolt down the upper bulkhead and finish off for tonight. There is because obviously with rally cars are four-wheel drive as opposed to rear-wheel drive drift cars now. But some of the last generation of drift cars were more towards front motor out. So this is about the mid 2010s. They were all running front motor based chassis, much like the DRB. I'll just grab it for you actually. Check. So this is a chassis that I was working on recently. So this is a Yokomo DRB. Again, you can sort of see that front motor weight position. That has now been converted to a rear-wheel drive chassis. But it doesn't. But the chassis are still around. So the DRB series all ran a more front motor based car to help get the weight transfer. Whereas now with rear-wheel drive, we're trying to get as much weight as far back as possible to get traction. So we just need to grab a few different screws to finish up here. Need some 2.5 by 4s to hold the pins in place. And we need some 3 by 8s for that. And we need some 3 by 10s and 3 by 6s to hold the cranks in place. So to hold everything here, we actually have to put these two screws. These actually will stop the upper pins from coming forwards. So that will go into just below there, and then just go in there to sit. That stops the upper pins from moving out of their slots, but it means you can easily adjust them later on by just removing the screw and sliding the pins out if you want to adjust your caster. So that's there, nice and smooth, beautiful. Now we've got to tighten the bulkhead up. So we have two 3 by 8s. They will go straight into here. And that will tighten the bulkhead up nicely. Beautiful. Nice and snug. Upper arms are ready. Beautiful. And the last thing to do is attach this brace to hold the bell crank in place. Perfect. So that is where we're going to leave it for tonight. I will have a look at the rear end as well tonight at some point. And you can have a bit of a look once we sort out the linkages for the back end. But the front is completely finished. That front bulkhead is gorgeous. Absolutely in love with how that looks. Nice and smooth, ready to have the front uprights all placed in there. So that will be tomorrow. We will get on to front suspension, battery mount, and attaching the rear bulkhead and the center brace. And that's where we're going to leave it for tonight, guys. So tune in pretty much the same time tomorrow. And we will continue the build and hopefully finish it. All right, guys. Take care. Have a great night. It's been really good fun. And